All right, get ready, because today we're going deep on how to really up your learning game.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking optimal study protocols.
Right.
And not just any protocol.
Uh-huh.
We're taking insights from Andrew Huberman,
Oh, wow.
Stanford neuroscientist. You shared his YouTube video with us.
Yeah.
And trust me, it is packed with some mind-blowing stuff about making learning stick.
It really is. His approach is fascinating.
Yeah.
Because he, goes beyond the surface
Yeah.
and really digs into the neurological processes.
Yeah.
It's not just tips and tricks, you
Right.
know?
But-
It's about understanding how your brain actually learns best.
So let's jump right in.
Yeah.
One of the first things that caught my attention
Mm-hmm.
was Huberman debunking the myth of learning styles.
Yeah.
The idea that some people are visual learners,
Right.
some people are auditory learners, and so on.
Yeah.
I have to admit,
Yeah.
I've always thought I was a visual learner.
Oop.
So this was kind of a surprise to me.
Interesting.
What's the real story here?
Well, we all might have preferences
Yeah.
for how we take in information,
Yeah.
but those preferences don't actually dictate how we learn.
Really?
Yeah, the research on learning styles
Okay.
is pretty much debunked.
So,
What really matters
Yeah.
is how we engage with the information,
okay.
not just how it's presented to us.
So it's less about finding the right format
Right,
and more about finding the right strategies.
exactly. And that's
Oh.
where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Huberman talks about neuroplasticity,
Okay.
which is essentially
Yeah.
the brain's ability to change and adapt based on experience.
Neuroplasticity, that's a word I've heard thrown around,
Oh, yeah.
but never really understood.
Yeah.
Can you break it down for us?
Think of it like this.
Okay.
Your brain isn't a fixed entity.
Yeah.
It's constantly rewiring itself
Okay.
based on what you do and learn. It's not just about
Yeah.
growing new brain cells.
Okay.
Although that does happen in certain areas.
Oh, right.
It's more about
Uh-huh.
strengthening the connections
Okay.
between existing neurons.
Okay.
It's kind of like
Yeah.
building a stronger pathway in your brain.
So the more you use certain connections, the stronger they get.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
Yep.
But how does that relate to, learning something new?
When you learn something new,
Uh-huh.
you're essentially creating
Okay.
and strengthening these neural pathways. It's
Yeah.
like carving a new trail
Okay.
in the woods.
Yeah.
The more you walk that trail,
Yeah.
the more defined and easier to follow it becomes.
So if I'm trying to learn a new language,
Okay.
the more I practice speaking
Yeah,
and using that language,
right.
the stronger those connections in my brain become.
Precisely.
Okay.
And here's a kind of fascinating twist.
Okay.
Sometimes learning actually involves removing connections.
Really?
Think about how babies start with
Yeah.
a lot of uncoordinated movements.
Mhm.
As they develop, their motor skills improve
Uh-huh.
because unnecessary connections are pruned away,
Oh.
making the pathways
Yeah.
for the desired movements more efficient.
So it's not just about adding more.
Right.
Sometimes it's about refining what's already there.
Exactly.
That's kind of mind-blowing.
It really highlights,
Yeah.
the dynamic nature of the brain. It's not
Yes.
like this static organ.
Right.
It's constantly adapting and optimizing
Okay.
based on what we expose it to.
So we've got this amazing adaptable brain,
Yeah.
but Huberman throws in a little curveball here.
Okay.
He says that instead of focusing on how to learn,
Uh-huh.
we should focus on how to fight forgetting.
Interesting.
Why this shift in perspective?
Because our brains are actually designed to forget.
Really?
Think about it.
Right.
If we remembered every single piece of information,
Yeah.
our brains would be completely overloaded. Forgetting is like an energy-saving mechanism,
Well-
like cleaning out your closet
Yeah.
to make room for new stuff.
So it's not enough to just cram information in there.
Right.
We've got to actively work to keep it from slipping away.
Exactly. And that's where one of the most powerful learning tools comes in.
Okay, what's that?
Testing.
Testing.
And I'm not talking about,
Yeah.
the stressful kind that gives you nightmares.
Right.
We're talking about self-testing
Oh, okay.
as a way to solidify learning.
Wait, testing is actually a good thing for learning.
It is.
I always thought it was just for evaluation,
Yeah.
to see how much you remembered.
That's what most of us are taught.
Right.
But it turns out
Yeah.
that testing itself
Okay.
is a powerful learning tool.
Wow.
Huberman mentions this classic study
Uh
from 1917
huh.
where researchers had two groups of kids
Okay.
read biographies.
Okay.
One group read them over and over again. The other group read them once and then tested themselves on what they remembered.
No flashcards, no quizzes.
Nope.
Just thinking back to what they read.
Exactly.
Wow.
And get this.
Okay.
The kids who tested themselves,
Uh,
even though they only read the material once,
yeah,
significantly outperformed the group who just reread multiple times.
that's incredible.
It is.
So simply trying to recall the information
Yeah,
helps us learn it better.
it does.
I would have thought repetition was key.
It seems counterintuitive,
Yeah.
but forcing yourself to retrieve information
Okay.
actually strengthens those neural pathways we were talking about.
Okay.
It's like giving your brain a workout.
This is already blowing my mind.
I know, right?
So how does this work in practice?
Wow.
What's the best way to test ourselves?
That's where it gets really interesting.
Right.
And we'll dive into the specifics of effective self-testing
Yeah.
right after this.
All right. Looking forward to it.
Yeah,
I'm ready to unlock my inner learning ninja.
I hear you.
All right. So we left off talking about self-testing.
Yeah.
And I'm ready to hear how to put this into practice
Okay.
and unlock my inner learning ninja.
Right.
What are the secrets to effective self-testing?
Well, one of the most important things
Yeah.
is the type of questions you use.
Okay.
Open-ended questions
Yeah.
are far superior to multiple choice.
Why is that?
Because with multiple choice, you're basically just recognizing a familiar answer
Right.
rather than generating it from scratch.
Right.
Open-ended questions force you to dig deeper
Uh.
and really articulate what you know.
So if I'm studying history,
Mhm.
instead of asking myself, what year did World War II start?
Right.
I should ask something like,
Yeah.
what were the key factors that led to the outbreak of World War II?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That kind of question forces you to engage with the material on a much deeper level,
Okay.
which leads to stronger encoding in your memory.
Makes sense.
And here's another crucial tip. Test yourself soon after learning, even if you don't feel ready.
Really?
Yeah.
Even if I feel like I'm going to forget everything.
It might seem counterintuitive,
Yeah.
but testing yourself early on
Uh-huh.
actually disrupts the forgetting process.
Oh. Okay.
Remember, our brains are constantly trying to shed information.
Yeah.
Early testing forces your brain to prioritize
Okay.
and retain what's important.
So it's like giving my brain a little nudge,
Yeah,
saying, hey, this stuff is important, hold on to it.
precisely.
Okay.
It's like planting a seed
Ah,
and then watering it immediately
right.
to help it take root.
I like that.
Now, while testing is a cornerstone of effective learning,
Yeah.
it's not the only strategy in our arsenal.
Okay.
Huberman also dives into the importance of emotion, story,
Okay.
and something called interleaving.
Okay. Emotion and story, I can see how those might tie into learning.
Yeah.
But interleaving,
Yeah.
that one's a bit of a mystery.
Okay.
What's that all about?
Interleaving is basically the idea of mixing up different subjects or topics while you're studying.
Okay.
It sounds counterintuitive, but
Yeah.
studies show that jumping between different concepts
Right.
actually helps you learn and retain information better
Really?
in the long run.
So instead of spending an hour on, say, biology
Yeah,
and then another hour on history,
right.
I should switch back and forth between them.
Exactly.
Wow.
It might feel like you're not making as much progress
Yeah.
because you're constantly switching gears,
Right.
but this disruption actually forces your brain to work harder
Okay.
and make connections
Yeah.
between seemingly unrelated concepts.
So it's like cross-training for your brain.
Exactly.
Instead of just lifting weights, you're incorporating cardio and flexibility
I love that analogy.
to become a more well-rounded athlete.
It perfectly captures the essence of interleaving.
Yeah.
It keeps your brain engaged
Ah.
and challenges it to make connections in a way that traditional linear studying doesn't.
This is so cool.
I know,
It feels like we're finally talking about learning
Yeah.
in a way that actually aligns with how our brains work.
It does.
Not some outdated factory model approach.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
And the best part is that
Mhm.
these techniques are accessible to everyone.
Right.
You don't need any fancy equipment or expensive courses,
Right.
just a willingness to experiment
Okay.
and find what works best for you.
So we've covered a lot of ground here,
We have.
but I'm curious to hear how much of a difference these techniques make in real life.
Uh-huh.
Are we talking about like a small boost
Okay.
or a major leap forward in learning ability?
Well, according to Huberman,
Yeah.
Self-testing alone can reduce forgetting by a whopping 50%.
50%.
Yeah.
Seriously?
And when you combine that with
Wow.
other strategies like interleaving
Yeah.
and incorporating emotion and story,
Right.
the impact can be even more significant.
If I'd known about this back in school,
I know, right?
who knows what I could have achieved?
It's not about achieving some, like, mythical level of perfect memory.
Right.
We all forget things.
Yeah.
And that's perfectly normal. The
Yeah.
point is
Yeah.
that we now have a toolkit of strategies
Yeah.
that can help us learn and retain information
Right.
more effectively.
It's empowering to realize that we have so much control over how we learn.
Absolutely.
And these techniques aren't just about
Right.
acing tests
Yeah.
or remembering facts for a presentation.
It's about lifelong learning,
Right.
About being able to embrace new challenges
Yeah.
and expand your knowledge base
Yeah.
throughout your life.
Before we move on,
Yeah.
I want to make sure we tie this back to our listener.
Okay.
Why should they care about all this brain science?
Well,
What's the so what?
Because it has the potential to transform their lives.
Really?
Whether you're a student, a professional,
Yeah.
or simply someone who loves to learn, these techniques can help you
Ah.
learn more efficiently, retain information longer,
Yeah.
and ultimately achieve your goals.
All right. I'm already feeling inspired to revamp my own learning strategies.
Me too.
But before we wrap things up,
Yeah.
I'm curious if there's anything else you think is essential for our listener to know about optimal learning. This has been a fascinating deep dive.
It has.
We've gone from debunking learning styles
Right?
to exploring the power of testing
Yeah.
and even how to incorporate emotion and story into our learning. It feels like we've been given a whole new set of tools to unlock our learning potential.
I agree. And there's one more point from Huberman that I think is worth emphasizing.
Okay.
He talks about the difference between familiarity and mastery.
Cool.
You know, we might think we know something because
Yeah.
we've seen it or heard it before,
Right.
but true mastery comes from
Yeah.
actively engaging with the material
Okay.
and testing ourselves.
So it's not enough to just passively absorb information.
Right.
We have to actively wrestle with it
Exactly.
and push ourselves beyond just recognizing it.
Huberman uses this analogy of
Right.
reading a recipe
Yeah.
versus actually cooking a meal.
Okay.
You might be able to, like, recite the ingredients and steps,
Yeah.
but you don't truly understand it until you've gotten your hands dirty and experienced it for yourself.
That's a great analogy.
That's where mastery lies.
It makes me think about something else Huberman mentioned.
What's that?
The idea that the best students in a study
Yeah.
weren't afraid to teach what they learned to their peers.
Oh, that's right.
It seemed counterintuitive at first.
Yeah.
You'd think.
You would.
You'd want to keep that knowledge to yourself,
Especially.
especially in a competitive environment.
Right.
But it turns out that the act of teaching,
Yeah.
of explaining a concept to someone else, forces you to organize the information in your mind and solidify your understanding. So even if we're not teachers in a formal sense,
Right.
maybe we can all benefit from finding a friend, a family member,
Yeah.
or even a rubber duck to explain things.
I love that.
Just the act of articulating the information
Yeah.
can help us learn it better.
Absolutely. And who knows?
Yeah,
You might even inspire someone else along the way.
I love that.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Okay.
what would you say is the most important takeaway for our listener?
I think the key takeaway is that effective learning is about working with our brains,
Yeah.
not against them.
Okay.
We need to embrace challenge,
Right.
leverage emotion,
Yeah.
and constantly test ourselves.
Okay.
It's not always easy,
Right?
but the results are well worth the effort.
It's almost like we've been driving with the parking brake on
Yeah.
when it comes to learning, and now we finally released it.
What a perfect way to put it.
And to think all this time we've been told to just read and reread,
I know, right?
highlight and underline.
Yeah.
But the real magic happens when we push ourselves to retrieve,
Yes.
to test, to make those connections, and to really engage with the material.
This deep dive has definitely given me a whole new perspective on learning.
Me too. I'm excited to start putting these techniques into practice
Yeah.
and see what I can achieve.
Me too. It's inspiring to think about all the possibilities that open up
Yeah.
when we tap into our full learning potential.
Well, that's about all the time we have for today. A
Okay.
huge thank you to Andrew Huberman for sharing his incredible insights on optimal learning.
Yeah, his work is great.
Be sure to check out the full YouTube video.
Yeah,
We'll link to it in the show notes.
for sure.
And of course, a massive thank you to you,
Yes.
our amazing listener, for joining us on this journey of discovery.
Until next time, keep those brains engaged.
Yes.
and keep on learning.
And don't forget to test yourself.
I won't.